literature suggests about the level of success of inquiry-based instruction. Okay, so let me go first with this presentation of the development of inquiry-based instruction and how inquiry-based started at all. Okay, way back in 1910, okay, we have Armstrong, who introduced the idea of heuristic method, or the Armstrong method, where he wanted to emphasize that students must have an attitude of being a discoverer. Okay, we wanted our students to experience finding out the things that they are learning instead of simply telling these items to them. Okay, for most of us who have been in the teaching profession for 20 or for 30 years or 2 or 3 decades, we were given the impression out of our previous learning experiences that our teachers are the sole source of information. And for most cases, we were given the idea that we have to learn. The best gauge of learning is on the factual knowledge that we are gaining. But the trends right now, and even how we define learning, likewise, the goals of the curriculum are already different from the time that we were students. Okay, that's why we have to recognize the idea that the manner that we are teaching is different from the time that our teachers are teaching us. So it's quite different. So we have to recognize this because eventually, upon recognizing this, we were able to come up with a paradigm shift on how we will be coming up and reinventing our science and mathematics teaching. So from this perspective, that Armstrong introduced that our students must have this kind of attitude being a discoverer. There were little improvement in science and mathematics teaching, and little evidences that inquiry base was integrated in science and mathematics teaching. Okay, because of the strong hold and how teachers during that time embraced behaviorism. Okay, that teaching of science and mathematics should be like this, and students must learn the facts, the basic information, and that's how we gauge learning during that time. Not until a great transition when Ausubel introduced the context of meaningful learning experiences, where he described, together with his colleague, described learning as a product of active, integrative interaction between new instructional materials and relevant ideas in the learner's existing structure of knowledge. So this is now the time when education sector try to recognize constructivism as an emerging theory of learning that somehow redirects and reshapes how we will be implementing teaching in our classroom. So when we say meaningful learning, it's more of acquisition of new meanings. And this process of providing new meaning to our student has two major parts, as I mentioned: assimilation and accommodation, where on this process of assimilation and accommodation, two things are we have to recognize: the prior knowledge of our students and the new knowledge our students will be learning. So the quest now for teachers is on how that we will be reconstructing this form of knowledge. So there should be a certain manner or process that we have to introduce in our classroom settings in order to capture and to actualize meaningful learning to our students. So eventually, when science education and mathematics educators come up with what we call scientific literacy, therefore, they come up with new ways and new goals or intentions of science. Okay, new intentions of science education. Therefore, in that time, we were able to come up with an understanding that we will come up with new ways or new lenses on how we will be translating these intentions of science and mathematics education into the classroom setting. So people were able, researchers and education advocates come up with the context of 21st century competencies or 21st century learning skills. Therefore, the modality of our instruction should be changed or should be altered. That's why, in order for our students to learn the concepts and processes of the different disciplines of science and even of math, it has to be presented and in an integrated manner. Okay, that's why in this context, we were able to come up with an understanding that we have to present an integrative, but at the same time, incremental progression of presenting the science concepts in different year levels, okay, which somehow backs up or back up, I mean to say, or scaffold the main framework of the science and mathematics curriculum design, okay, especially in the Philippine setting. So because of these new advocacies, particularly on the context of scientific literacy and how we are envisioning our science and mathematics teaching, we were able to introduce this method of inquiry-based instruction as our how do I best describe this? Okay, instructional model. I'll be using that as an instructional model in describing teaching and learning processes in science and mathematics classroom. Okay, but we have to understand first three distinct aspects of inquiry. Okay, where we wanted to have the understanding of science as inquiry, learning as inquiry, and teaching as inquiry. So when we say science as an inquiry, it refers to the diverse ways or methods scientists study the natural world. On the other hand, when we say learning as inquiry, it refers to the different activities our students are doing as they develop their own knowledge and understanding of the ideas that we are presenting to them. And at the same time, it's their way of understanding how science or how scientists, I mean to say, study the natural world. Likewise, when we say teaching as inquiry, it's a way of providing authentic questions and experiences that will generate that are generated from students' experiences as our central strategy in teaching science. Okay, so in that context, we are given a sum up of understanding about inquiry as a multifaceted activity that involves observations, posing questions, uh, providing our students ways of examining different sources of information. They will be planning out investigation, reviewing what they have gathered, okay, from the experiment that we provided them, experiment activities that we provided them. We wanted them to analyze and interpret the data, proposing solutions or answers and explanations, and even communicating the results. So meaning to say, the items that I have been sharing with you are the key essentials that our students must experience in an inquiry-based instruction. From the time that we are posing questions, then the time that they are required to do observation, coming up with experiment activities, and then verifying it, determining whether which of the variables are the one directly influencing or identifying which are the independent and the dependent variables, and then coming up ways of presenting, analyzing, and interpreting the data, and providing solutions, okay, and sharing their results. So these are the sets of activities that our students needed to um, needed to experience in order to capture what Ausibel's perspective of meaningful learning experiences. So in this context, later on, we will be giving you a certain form of instructional model under inquiry-based instruction that will capture these three distinct aspects of inquiry, of where our students will be experiencing the different ways the scientists are doing in their own experiments, as how teachers are providing, as how students are performing different learning activities that will help them to develop their understanding of the science and mathematics concepts. At the same time, of the triggers that the teachers are posing to our students in order to capture them into the learning process.